In this video, we're going to look at how to draw teeth, more specifically, the fundamentals, the basics, the most primary building block of how you actually draw teeth. How do you draw teeth when someone's mouth is open? How do you draw it from different angles? How do you actually construct the face around teeth? Do you even do that in the beginning? I think teeth are one of the most frustrating, challenging things to draw as an artist, but they do add a lot of character and emotion to your characters, to your creatures. If you can get this right, you can get all the nuances sort of working well. Often one of the biggest tricks with teeth is that you need to know what's there, all the structure, so that you can actually suggest it. You can draw those little lines between the teeth, just kind of put in a little bit of stuff that kind of gives us more of the feeling that there's something there. If you draw too much, it often ends up looking, like people have got braces. It looks a little bit funny. So again, it's one of those things where you need to understand the structure. Anyway, that's what we're going to be doing in this video. Hopefully you'll join me. Let's jump in and get started. Alright, welcome to the Drawing Codex. My name is Mcburnie. I've been a professional working artist for over 20 years, and on this channel, we're all about drawing cool stuff from our imagination, embracing the challenge of drawing, and mastering the craft of line and color illustration. Now, if you'd like to learn more about line and color illustration, the same style that I create all my comics and illustrations in, you can check out my free Quick Start Guide. It's aimed to get you up and running quickly in Photoshop, developing your own simple, reliable line and color process. It's free. The link will be in the description. Go check it out. All right, here we are at the drawing table. Tools for today that really matter is just that I'm using a pencil, a Blackwing matte, and we're going to go over the very basics of how to draw teeth. Now, this all starts, to my mind, with the concept of the horseshoe shape that represents roughly what the teeth look like, separated. Now, it's important to understand that we need to combine the things that we're doing here with actually drawing a face. In this case, again, I'll talk a little bit about how we might do that if we're drawing a cartoony, manga, comic style face, but obviously the teeth fit in the skull here. The question is, like, what's going on with those teeth and how do we sort of draw them? So the way I like to think about it is to think about it as if we have this kind of horseshoe shape, and horseshoe, right, is just literally, in case you are unaware, is this type of shape, right? It's a metal shoe they put on horses' hooves, and that is the best way I have found to describe what's going on. Now, I'll make a follow-up video talking about some of the construction, the technical drawing of this, but really all we're doing is we're drawing a U shape, and we are constructing form based on that. So we're drawing one U shape, we close it off, then I'm tracing down, and I'm drawing another U shape underneath it. And again, that's kind of what you need to practice. Now, obviously, these are not teeth, and they're not placed within a skull, right? That will come later, but in this video. So what we are kind of thinking of doing when we construct teeth this way is to break it down into the primary form. Now, the reason we break this down into primary form is that, then you can kind of draw it from whatever angle you need to. And all we're going to do is divide this into two. And in this video, I'm not going to worry about how many teeth there are, exactly what the anatomy is. This is less about anatomy, and this is more about the theory behind it. Now, what we're kind of doing essentially is just breaking up this form. So I'm going to find the center line, boom, right, which would be the line that runs straight down the center between the teeth, unless you're Tom Cruise or someone like that who has a tooth just smack bang in the middle of your face, in which case seems to have worked out pretty well for him. And again, I'm just going to draw very, very simple teeth, right? So this is not how the real anatomy of teeth work, but this will give us a good understanding of the basic structure that we need to work with, right? So we got a line there, and then we're just going to draw more horseshoe shapes along the top. right, and others along the bottom, and this gives us the feeling of the gums. Now, obviously, there's not a lot of structure here, but this is the fundamental thing that we are going to do. And this gives us most of the structural components that we're going to need in order to draw teeth. So again, that's the basic idea here. Let's look at, again, how we actually apply that to a head. So this is where practicing your form drawing will really help. Now, firstly, what I'm going to do is just see if I can add it to a skull. So again, this is going to look pretty weird. And this is where we are doing a mix of anatomy, a mix of form drawing, a mix of a whole bunch of different things. But if I imagine here, I have a skeleton. Well, again, not an actual skeleton, but a rough form-based version of a skeleton. So what we've got here is we've got the top, right, the non-jaw element of the skeleton. And what's happening here is that this is where our horseshoe shape is fitting in. Right, so we're going to think about, again, track and find where that center is. Well, put in the jaw here. I'm kind of just making this up from my imagination, but you can obviously see where a lot of this stuff comes from. So what we're doing and thinking about as we create the form here is, again, this horseshoe shape and where this fits in to the actual skull. And when you're drawing this and you're drawing the mound of the mouth, again, it is very useful to think about. Let's just take that back so we can kind of hit it again and pull out some lines. Yeah, really useful to think about the curvature of these major forms. Right, so you can't really see a look because we're looking sort of directly at it. We'll try a few different angles as we progress, but as we're just kind of looking at it, you can see, right? We're not seeing a lot of the horseshoe shape, but this is the fundamentals of how we can get the structure that we need to be there. Now, there's a lot of different elements to this, as I said. You have to think about how you represent, how you draw them. Typically if we draw too much teeth, right, it looks funny, looks a little bit overdone. But that's basically the fundamentals of what we're doing. Within the skull, we are identifying that horseshoe shape of the teeth. And again, if you've looked at sort of fake teeth, or you've been to the dentist and they have those kind of, plaster casts they take of your teeth or whatever, it's very much the same thing. Now, again, as I said, we're not dealing here with anatomy. We're just dealing here with what you need to think about as you draw it. So let's take that a little bit further, and we'll start to think about what happens maybe when we kind of move the jaw a little bit. How do we actually put a real face, not just a silly sort of skeleton face on it, and again, how we kind of use this day to day. So in addition to practicing obviously closed teeth, often when we're drawing characters, the teeth are slightly open or very open. And this is where, again, we're going to use the same basic logic. I can draw my horseshoe shape here, right? Again, let's find the center. Let's drop that down. I'm being very rough here. The more you study your perspective, your fundamentals, the easier this will be. So here we can see, all right, that's where the top might be sort of normally, right? I've got this horseshoe shape on the top. Just pick out some lines there to make that a little bit clearer. Boom. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at what happens as this basically rotates down. So what we're going to have now is like we can sort of calculate roughly where this is going to be, and I can track my center line down so that, again, I can get a pretty good indication of where that horseshoe shape might be there. And again, we're just going to draw, instead of this, right, being underneath, we're just going to open up. Boom. Right, and that's kind of what we got. So again, I'm going to take a little bit of this graphite away so that I can reiterate the important marks. And here we have a little bit more form to work with now. But we're going to use and think about very much the same things, which is, okay, in this case, we've just got some, you know, silly teeth that don't exist, right? But again, the way that you would map out where these teeth go is exactly the same if you did actually calculate how many teeth there are and their precise arrangement to each other. Now here, I can't really see these teeth, right? But I can start to see these teeth over here. And again, this is where thinking about, you know, how many teeth are back here is going to help, because, right, if we can see the open mouth, right, we can start to construct the teeth a little bit better. Now, if we imagine we have, again, these kind of silly teeth that don't exist, where all teeth are kind of incisors or whatever, right, you can see how that would start to work. And again, there would be a tongue, right, coming somewhere like that, right? Obviously, some of these teeth at the back here are going to be molars, right? In which case, again, we would use a slightly different way of, you know, adding form there, etc. But for the most part, this is what we do. We sort of divide it up, and this makes sure that we can track and make things symmetrical, right? And as we construct down, again, I'm just drawing these lines, right? And that goes down. So again, let's look at how we do that with the skull. So again, I'm going to draw the skull slightly from above, so it's a little bit easier for me to see there. Boom, boom. I'm going to drop that down. So I've got my center line, right? I'm going to have my nasal cavity. And again, you can kind of see that happening there. I would have my center line here that comes out, right? And then goes down. And then we would kind of have this center line. And this is where we really see the idea of that horseshoe shape coming in handy. Right. Again, I'm just doing a cartoony version of a skull here. Right? This is not anatomically accurate by any means. So, same thing here, right? But now I can start to see where this horseshoe shape is going to be. Get the center of it. Boom, 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 boom. Now, what we're doing is just looking at how, right, we might move and have this open. And again, all I'm doing is the same thing. Fundamental structure is one horseshoe shape, right? And then another horseshoe shape there. Almost exactly the same as what I'm doing here, right? Except here, right, I've got horseshoe shape like this if we're looking at it from the side, right? And then the other one is just below it. Whereas in this case, right, I've got one here. And if we look at it from the side, right, we're getting this. If that makes sense. So super simple, right? It's really just this line and this line that we're drawing, right? I'm going to track the center line, try and imagine, visualize where that would be. And again, we're going to draw this here. So again, got a really dark pencil, right? We're gonna lose some of these lines and get sort of mushy, so I do apologize for that, but I think this will be easier to see on the screen. All right, so I've got center line there, and then center line here, right? And you can see what's going to happen is that this jaw is going to come back a little bit. Right. And again, if we were to think about and visualize where a tongue would be somewhere there, because that might help. Now, again, we just transfer those teeth down. Just visualize. I'm just visualizing where these lines might be. And this is where we get boom, 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 boom. Right, we get all our teeth. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate this because it feels awkward to just do silly cartoony teeth like this. It's kind of ridiculous. But again, the fundamental thing here is just to understand the structure. Once you kind of understand the structure and the rules that are at play here, then what you can do is do all sorts of crazy stuff, right? We could make, some of these teeth really serious vampire teeth, right? We could increase the size of the canines, right? Go crazy. And again, that's some of the things I'll do in some follow-up sort of videos on teeth. All right. So again, that hopefully gives you an idea of the structure. Next, what I'll do is just quickly look at how we go about placing teeth and using this idea when we're actually drawing a face, because obviously you can't see half of this stuff when you're actually drawing most of the time. So when we look at the skull, what is typically going to happen is exactly this is happening, but we have lips kind of either being a little bit above this line, right? And this is very much based on character and anatomy and, how people hold themselves, in their face, all this kind of stuff. But let's look at the basics of it to begin with, right? So I'm going to start by creating a vague, I'm just going to sharpen that pencil, vague kind of Loomis construction. Now, again, we're probably not going to get to the point where I'm going to, spend a lot of time doing a nice rendering and see how this works. That's kind of, you kind of probably see me do that if you look at some of my demos, how I actually employ this. But again, in this case, I'm not going to draw the skeleton, although the Loomis mannequin is, a little bit based on a skeleton. But in this case, what I'm trying to do is visualize for myself. Often what I put in to kind of figure out where the eyes go are some of these same markers, right? And again, what I'm going to do, and what you've often seen me do, if you've looked at other demos on the channel, if you haven't, go check them out for, got plenty of drawing face videos, right? I've got this simple construction, and this gives me most of what I need. Boom, 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 boom. Now, this is where it's tricky to figure out, okay, like, what do you draw first? Very much, whatever you want. If you think about doing a construction phase to your drawing, you can really basically draw the whole skull, which is what some people do. You draw the whole skull, and then you draw all the flesh over it, and then you kind of have a whole bunch of lines going everywhere, and then you kind of, erase them out, pick out the ones you want. That's totally fine. It's a big part of the line and color style, which is often what I'm doing. But again, you could either draw the lips and the shape of the face first, and then I can put in the teeth, or I can put in the teeth first and then kind of figure out where the lips go around it. Totally up to you. Again, part of this is you exploring how you do it and playing around. So if you want to do some exercises, again, try these drawings, try these processes, and see what works for you. But I basically do it two different ways depending on what I'm doing. But either way, what I'm looking for is just this line. So I've got this kind of mound of the mouth, which is giving me this kind of giant ball that the lips and the teeth sit on. And again, we can see there where the horseshoe shape is probably likely to fit in there. So often what I'm doing from a line marker is I'm not worrying too much about the upper and lower parts of it, but I'm just thinking about this internal line that separates the teeth. I'm thinking about where that peaks and where the the center line goes, right? So again, this guy's going to have a pretty toothy smile, let's say. But yeah, what we could do is I could start to kind of put in, right, and indicate where they might be. And this is where you can play around with it and you start to see how these things work, right? So we're going to get a bit of an X-ray sort of look here. Boom, boom. But you can see that's kind of what's happening. Now, what you need to think about is like, okay, well, what happens, right? If the guy has a smile, right, you might see something like this, right? It's going to look a little bit creepy. It's a little bit exaggerated. But, you know, this is kind of what's happening, right? We're going to have this stuff coming up here, right? And that's kind of what you're going to see. Now, again, this is hideously exaggerated, a little bit creepy, a little bit of a Joker smile. And again, that is one of the dangers here is, you know, you draw too many teeth and the whole thing looks weird. But again, depending on how we draw this line, the whole look of the face is going to change. So I'll do one last little demo to kind of just illustrate that point. Boom, draw a quick little head here. Hopefully I don't rush this one too much. Just drop a line here. Boom. Right, I've got a nose. Got some cheekbones indicated. I've got a center line. Again, I have a mound of the mouth. I have a chin. Right, and I'm just sort of blocking in where this stuff goes. So again, I'm going to find that center line. Let's get rid of a bit of this sketchiness. Right, but again, these are the lines I'm interested in from a construction phase. Center. Right. Got a nose here. Right, center line here. And yeah, what I can also do is just draw, right, like a mouth. If you want to do something a little bit more cartoony, think about, you know, the shape of the mouth. And now what I have is I know where the center line is. And I can maybe say, okay, let's draw a little bit more darkness in there to sort of indicate that, hey, what's happening is, right, one tooth is a little bit more raised above the other. So I'm kind of coming at it using sort of like vague, fuzzy, inductive logic to a certain degree. And then I'm going to sort of say, okay, where's that center line, right? Now, if I wanted to draw all the teeth here, I could go and draw all the teeth, right? Draw, draw, draw. And probably, as you kind of see as they go towards here, right, these are going to sort of start to fade out a little bit more. So what I'm seeing here is a little bit more of the shadow within the face, right? Sorry, within the mouth. Boom. Now, your decision is often about how much of this you draw, right? Do you suggest the shape of the teeth? Do you actually draw each tooth? It totally depends on the character, right? Like how much you want to be there. But this is often what I'm thinking about. And similarly, again, one last little trick, although, again, I'm going to this would probably the subject of its own little video. And again, hopefully I don't rush this one too much, but if we look at a similar kind of idea, you can see that if I think about where that mound of the mouth is, right here I've got some eyes. Right, we can think about like, okay, let's try and make it more of a character. Right, like it's kind of shouting a little bit. Right, now here I've got the horseshoe at the top. This one doesn't move, right? This is the one that doesn't move. But this one does, right? Boom. So I kind of know where this line is, and look, it's very hard to define these points because it's so, right, clear. But I can sort of try and, because I'm looking directly at it, it's very hard for me to see where these points are, right? But again, I can sort of guesstimate and think about, look, where are the back of those teeth there, right? Trying to sort of think about and visualize where the back is here, right? And where the back is here, right? And then again, I'm going to draw the bottom horseshoe, and this is probably the one that I'm going to see the most, right? And again, got some teeth here. And this is where, again, you know, you can just draw the mouth around it. Now, I'm just being super simple with the way that I draw this mouth, because there's so much subtlety in precisely exactly how much you show of the teeth and, you know, what goes where. the subtleties of what happens here will define the exact feeling of the character, right? But hopefully we get at least a bit of an understanding for how that might work. Right, got teeth there, it's probably a bit too much teeth. Right, and now we can kind of see in the mouth. Again, you know, it looks like we're going to the dentist and going, ah. But hopefully this gives you a bit of an insight into, you know, how we start to think about this process and what's going on. Again, I do apologize, we're not dealing with real anatomy, just sort of form, but hopefully you'll also understand that, you know, just doing these silly teeth like this makes it a little bit easier to show you when we're dealing with such small drawings. But this is the basics for how I draw teeth, and again, mostly how I teach other people and give advice for, you know, how you or they could draw teeth. Let me know in the comments if this one was helpful, whether you'd like to see more teeth videos or something else. Got any other questions or follow-up suggestions? Let me know down below. Other than that, catch you around. Happy drawing.